evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Crispin, and Jeanette and I are linked to Boundless Wisdom and Boundless Leadership. And I've been looking forward to this evening the whole day. Caryn, I was saying to you just now, I think it's so messy and tacky out there at the moment, and read the newspapers and the headlines, and it just is so gloomy and dark. And then you have this topic that says, brave leadership, you're called to courage. And so I'm really, really looking forward to this evening, to the conversation that you and Jeanette will be having. And I want to encourage you all to please make use of the chat box. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I will be keeping an eye on the chat and bring your voice into the room as we proceed. So please, any questions, any comments, anything you'd like to just share, and just put it in the chat. And I will pick that up and then bring it into the conversation. So I know we got a lot to cover, and I don't want to spend too much time on the introduction. Jeanette, thank you for pulling all of this together with Caryn. Thank you for the initiative. Thank you for the creative way you've designed it and structured it. It really is exciting. And I'm going to hand over to you to kick off and introduce Caryn and take it from there, please.
All right, thank you. Welcome, everyone. It would really be good for us if you could just say hello to us in the chat. Give us an indication of where you're from, and maybe start popping in your definition of brave leadership. And we can see where and what your thinking is around that. So I'd like to introduce you to Caryn. Caryn is very, very modest in the way that she brands herself, but Caryn is a brave heart catalyst. She's a certified Dare to Lead facilitator. She's a psychological safety specialist. She's an executive coach, and she's the leader at Human Resource Practice. She's got incredibly extensive experience in all facets of HR and OD work, and works on Dare to Lead projects at a global level. As she just mentioned, now she's just been working with some people in India. Caryn loves her family. She loves the bush, and she just completed her 11th Cape Town cycle tour this year. So well done, Caryn. Great. So Caryn, is there anything else you'd like to add as you just say hello to everyone?
No, not really, Jeanette, but thank you. I feel honored to be here with you. And I always believe in wisdom, and I look at wisdom in leadership. So it really is an honor to be here. Thank you.
Great. So we're going to get started straight away, if you're happy, Caryn, for us just to get straight in. So one of the first things we'd like to just unpack with you a little bit is to extrapolate those nuggets of wisdom from Brené Brown. You know, many of us have had some exposure, either through Brené's TED Talks or podcasts or her books, or we've seen some quotes or some snippets. But Brené's work is really founded in very deep and extensive scientific research. And we're not always aware of the depth of the work that actually sits behind the work that Brené has done. So maybe to kick off, Caryn, could you share with us just some of the most critical and important nuggets of wisdom extracted from Brené Brown's work?
Thanks, Jeanette. Yeah, Brené is, what you see is what you get. When you've watched a video, that's what she's like. She's like that in meetings. She's like that when she's sharing things. I'm always amazed at how incredibly bright she is and has a deep understanding of people. But she's also curious, and everything that she does is backed by research. And she doesn't say anything without that depth of research. And if she's curious, she'll go back to all her data and find out, or she'll send her research teams out to find out. So her TED Talk is the fourth most watched TED Talk in the world still today. And they're millions and millions of people. And she did that TED Talk in 2010. And what it was about was looking at what drives connection. It was with her PhD, what drives connection between people. And what she found very quickly is there's certain things that wholehearted and people have got everything together do. And then there's the rest of us and what we do. And she also found out and discovered that things get in the way, and shame was one of the things. And I won't go into it now, but we are hardwired as people for connection. We want connection. That's what happened. Is she did more and more research. She was curious and published books, because she said she didn't want to just publish for the academic world. Just a few people read her findings, but she wanted to publish books that the everyday person could read. Her mother and her sisters could read as well. And we could read them about, I think it's true, about her last book, you could read it on a transatlantic flight plus VAT. So I value this work because it's based on research. So the premise is that we're all worthy of love and belonging, not fitting in, because that's the opposite of belonging. Fitting in is where we adapt part of ourselves to fit in. We change ourselves. And then I love the work because of the whole concept of courage. And as Crispin said, courage, there's small acts of courage every single day, and then those big life purpose acts of courage that we do. And then we also know if we're brave enough, often enough, we're going to fall. And it's about doing things to develop that resilience. And very strong in this work is our values. So we choose our values, we use them as a guidepost for where we want to go, but we also use them to hold ourselves accountable in what we do. And then another core, which she calls as one of the skills of developing courage, is looking at trust. And trust is developed with others by small little things that we do. It's also destroyed by small and big things that we do. But the part that I love the most is trust starts with trusting ourselves.
Lovely. Lovely. And I actually just want to, I'm just remembering now when you mentioned values, I remember doing that exercise you did with us. Remember when we had to draw around our feet, and the principle around that exercise was that you can only have two values. You know, we do a lot of value exercises and we normally end up having so many. And you said there are only two. You have to choose only two because you can't actually deal with too many more than that. And I actually pulled out my exercise today and looked at my two around my feet that had been drawn. And I looked at my two values and I looked at absolutely, that's exactly that which anchors me as such. But we can get to that one a little bit later. So you mentioned shame, and you said you're going to talk about that a little bit later, but a lot of Brené's work is anchored in this whole principle of shame and how shame has so much impact on the way that we actually, you know, show up. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about why Brené puts so much emphasis on shame?
Yeah, because I think in her early research, it's the shame stopped connection between people. It's and so it was part of her early research. In the Dare to Lead, as we evolve, the work is about shame resilience. So we all have shame. And when I first read about this, I thought, oh, I don't have shame. And then the more I read, I thought, I do actually have quite a bit of shame. So everybody has shame unless you're a psychopath. And what shame is that intense feeling that, or experience where we think that we are flawed, and because we're flawed, we're unworthy of love and belonging and connection. So we believe that there are two messages that we tell ourselves is I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not clever enough, I'm not pretty enough, and the other thing that we hear ourselves saying when we're trying to be brave is, who do you think you are? I think it could tie into what a lot of people do around the imposter syndrome. So we explore this concept in leadership because it's for us to understand when we're in shame, because if we do not understand shame and how it shows up in ourselves and our response, we actually work out our shame on other people. So that is why it really is crucial. So what happens in organizations, it's been seen as a behavior change tool. If I can compare, if I can shame people, if I can bully people, I might change them, but it's not. So it creates toxic cultures. And when you hear about people at work, I go, okay, that sounds like shame. You know, when you're gossiping about other people, or you don't have the courage to have that meeting. In the meeting, you wait till the meeting's over, and you talk about instead of having, what shame? Do you not think you're good enough to talk about it in the meeting? So the number one fear or shame trigger in the workplace, and I think this is a crucial point, is the fear of irrelevance. So people feel that the world is changing, and it is rapidly, and we're not keeping up with that change. We're not learning and growing. We feel that we've been left behind. So that's the number one fear in the workplace. So, yeah. And then the beauty about this work in terms of shame is that there's an antidote to shame, and that's empathy and self-compassion.
Okay, great. And Di mentioned that there's a correlation between shame and not loving self, and that has an impact or could play out. Crispin, I think you wanted to mention, was that
Exactly
related
that.
to
Yes,
that in the chat?
Yeah.
Caryn, just a response to that, the correlation or the relationship between shame and your inability to love yourself or accept yourself, and how that then has an impact on how you could love and connect with others.
And that really ties with that, the antidote to shame is empathy and self-compassion. And self-compassion is that accepting yourself, warts and all, that so one of the armors that Brenda talks about is perfectionism. But if we know we're not perfect, we're going to make mistakes. We're very human, and it's okay. And to love ourselves. Yeah. One of the sayings Brené has is, who we are is how we leave. But self-awareness and self-love really matter.
Yeah, and I think, this whole element of self-acceptance is actually quite huge, because the root of a lot of behaviors that we sort of display come from, as you mentioned when you started, that I am enough, I'm okay as I am, and that self-compassion, to accept myself for who I am with what I bring, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and just being compassionate and in understanding of that allows me to connect better with people around me. Yeah,
and what it doesn't mean is that we just accept. That it means that we strive to be the better version of ourselves. That we learn and grow.
So share with us, you were one of the first licensed facilitators for Dare to Lead, and it's become part of your sort of life work per se. Share a little bit with us about what attracted you, what got you to being, because I know I applied at some stage and then I was said, no, the doors are now closed. And I think you were one of the first out of the starting blocks. Share a little bit more with us about that privilege of being able to be a trained Dare to Lead licensed facilitator.
Yeah, I reckon I was the first one to get my application in. I was that committed. I'd had a really difficult family situation, and I'd learned about her work a few years ago, and I was even using it in development and organizational development. And when my friend gave me the book, the Rising Strong book, And yeah, dealing with a difficult family situation. I was reading this book. I was in Greece, and I was saying to my husband, she wrote this book for me. It's just perfect. And so I then became quite obsessed in terms of her work. And I really wanted, she used to have another kind of facilitation, so I was trying to get accredited for that. And then she wrote Dare to Lead and invited facilitators, and my skill set was just right for that. So off we went in 2019, and so I think she trained up about 400 facilitators around the world. So you walk into a room and they're very like-minded people. And actually I've learned from them as from Brené herself. So actually I do this work because I need this work. And I continue. Something that resonates 1 year might not be as important as something that I need to grow and work on in another year. I'm always learning. And I learn from people that I work with.
Okay. So the book is entitled Dare to Lead, but she's written many books, and a lot of her work, although applicable across all fields, we want to hone it back into and bring it into leadership and how we use this within a leadership context. So let's talk a little bit about 3 specific terms and the interrelationship of those terms into leadership. And that is, if we talk and bring together vulnerability, courage, and authenticity. Those are 3 terms that are used quite broadly in the leadership context. And yet they're distinctly different, but are very interrelated, in fact. So please share with us a little bit more about how we play this out.
Yeah. So when Brené took her work to leadership, she went and did research, and she said she interviewed 150 top leaders around the world. And she said, what do you need to make your organization sustainable in the future? And they all came up, we need courage. And she was saying, oh, you do look like a courageous person. And they came back to her and said, we are scared most of the time. So what she then unraveled is that before we're courageous, we experience a certain amount of vulnerability, and we cannot get to being courageous without being vulnerable. And they're very big. I think getting married is a very vulnerable experience. We don't know what we're getting. It's a matter of luck, actually. But she defines vulnerability as when things are risky, it's uncertain, and you're emotionally exposed. So I use those as my checklist. Am I feeling vulnerable? Yeah, I'm one of them, or all 3 of them. And if you think, even speaking up in a meeting, when you think that you are not as important as the other people, requires a bit of vulnerability to have that courageous conversation, or your even courageous input. So, yeah. I think and we've all done the same, ask people, can you get to being courageous without it being vulnerable? And as I said before, knowing that we're going to be courageous and it might not work out. This is not promising that everything's going to be hunky-dory. Things might be risky, and it's not always going to be perfect. But what we need to do is unlearn what we've done and relearn. So, and just be ourselves, so that we grow to being the best version of ourselves. Yeah.
So then we're talking authenticity, being real and being true in terms of who we really are.
Yeah.
Being brave and daring, which is courageous. And I remember when I was in the program with you, that we spoke about vulnerability and the emotional exposure you spoke about. And I remember we did some exercises where we were looking at, but vulnerability is not you laying your all on the table and sharing everything. How do we as leaders or just generally as people, how do we determine what is, I don't even want to use the word calculated or selected or relevant. They all seem so defining, but how do you know when being vulnerable as a leader specifically, how much do you share to be authentically true and vulnerable and courageous, but that is useful for you as well as being useful for the people around you, because bearing all is not vulnerability either, right?
No, no, it isn't. It's not sharing your deepest, darkest secrets. Sometimes it's about, as a leader, saying, I don't actually know. If I've got something to share with you, you'll be the first to know. But in this instance, I don't know. It's about dealing with people's feelings and their fears and their emotions, even if you don't have all the answers. It's about showing up and being there. It's about, and we use a concept called grounded confidence. And so, and we talk about going into the arena and or being in those courageous situations. And what happens when we try and be brave or vulnerable? We put up bits of armor. And some of those armors is where we are knower. We pretend we know everything, instead of being a learner and being curious about things. So that's about the grounded confidence. The other things that we can do is to also understand, this is what daring leaders do, understand the language of emotion. Up to now, we've been told, put your emotions as you walk into the work, put them away. Don't show your emotions. I told my daughter, don't ever cry at work. Whatever you do, don't cry at work. Go to the bathroom and sort yourself out. Now, I tell her, it's okay to feel. Feel what you feel. Yeah. So armored leaders don't actually acknowledge the emotion and the fear that they're facing. They would choose the comfort zone. And sometimes we are very uncomfortable with other people's discomfort. Instead of just sitting and holding that space for that person's discomfort, just being with them, letting them know that you're not alone. Another key part of being a brave leader is this, I call it the superpower of curiosity, is just asking questions, asking questions. So you don't make assumptions. You find out what's really going on and you guide people so that they can come up with the answers themselves, versus criticizing and challenging people, or even what a lot of people do is show indifference or disinterest. Humility is very important as well. And it's not modesty, it's not insecurity or versus hustling for one's worth. It's just practicing that deep humility. It's about really trying to get this right, which takes a lot of practice, yeah, versus that self-protection of perfectionism or getting stuck in fear. So it's about really getting to understand yourself. And I spoke about the emotions, feeling embodied, feel where you are, feel those emotions. What's it telling you? I think, Jeanette, you might have remembered learning, there's no such thing as a good or bad emotion. Look, not all of them are nice, but they're telling us something. They're information. They're guiding us in terms of something. Yeah. And another concept that is coming out in the Dare to Lead work is about sharing power. So sharing power with people, giving other people power, and power within, developing people's power within, instead of that power over. So those are the kind of things that daring leaders really need to work on.
Okay, great. And I know, Crispin, you've put hand up. I just want to check once again if that's that comment that Di made again. There was a comment, I think, that related something to, can one fake courage? I think that was the question. But Crispin, if you can help us out here.
Caryn, you mentioned armored leaders. I'm seeing the leader with armor, and then Di's question around faking courage and faking bravery, and sometimes I'm just wondering, could it be that I'm not even aware of the fact that I may be faking?
I'm pretending.
I'm pretending, but I don't even know that I'm pretending. And how does one break through that personally and in feedback to people and to leaders?
Yeah, I think it's about connecting with people and seeing, is this what they need? Is this what the organization needs? And doing it together. I think maybe faking courage is when we do have that power over people instead of listening and connecting with people. Sometimes I think courage, we do need to take that first step, even if we're really scared. And I don't think being scared when we're doing things is about faking courage. It's about being real about what courage is. So if we're putting courage on that persona that I've got everything together, I'm a real knower, I can do this, that would be what I consider faking courage. Yeah.
Right.
Do you see a lot of that in the work you're doing?
Of people knowers, and yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are many different armors that we can put on when we're feeling vulnerable. So when we feel vulnerable, we have a response to it. And we need to look at what is that response to feeling vulnerable. I spoke about being the learner. Perfectionism is a response where we look at compliance. This is the way that we do things, and that's the way we also need to do it. That's another way of putting that armor on. It's about being served by other people instead of being that servant leader. That's another way of putting armor on as a leader. It's about when things go wrong and there are setbacks, you get owned by that instead of turning them into a learning opportunity. So that would be another part of an armor. Another aspect of armor is, and I often see this in the workplace, is exhaustion is seen as a status symbol. So we purposely send our emails at 11 o'clock at night because I'm working so hard and I worked all weekend. Yeah. And another thing that we do, and I do see this, particularly in South Africa, is that we've got an action bias about getting things done. We just want to get things done. We want to get people out of our office, so we tell them what to do, versus slowing down and spending some time and saying, what problem are we trying to solve? And asking the people, how would you like me to support you in this situation? So I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Right. So we've unpacked a little bit of what a brave leader could look like. And we've been unpacking a little bit about what are some of the behaviors that display themselves when we are not brave. Are there any additional pointers you can give us just for us firstly to understand, because we're going to move on to the positive after this and start really looking at what it means to be brave as a leader. Are there any more pointers you can give us in terms of what does it look like when we do not practice brave leadership in our work situations with people around us?
Yeah, so I think a big one is, and it's linked to that discomfort, we don't want to be uncomfortable, is about giving people feedback in a clear and kind way. And not only in a kind way, where we avoid it rather. And I think that's largely how we were brought up. But we give people honest and productive feedback. We also acknowledge the fears and the feelings of people instead of try and manage the bad behavior. So in times of upheaval, so that really does happen. We work a lot on trust. And one of the biggest ways to develop trust if you're a leader is to ask people to help you. Yet we still need to establish boundaries and accountability and responsibility when we develop trust. We're also not taking enough risks, and we know how important that is for the new world and creativity and innovation that's needed. I spoke about getting stuck in the setbacks as well, instead of using everything as a learning opportunity. Another thing is where we blame people, and we shame and blame them instead of holding people accountable in a really constructive way. So blame alleviates. If we can blame someone, we feel a lot better. And we're also not having discussions around diversity and equity, inclusion and belonging. We're wanting people to just fit in to the state. Yeah, so we rush into solutions. So that's really what we do. We don't look at the organizational values. We don't discuss our values. And yeah, we just want everyone to be perfect and fit in, which reduces our learning and growing.
Thank you for that. Caryn, are we able, before we move into the Brave Leadership, can we recreate in the minds of everyone here tonight? Can we recreate and just explain what it means to step into the arena? And what I'd like us to do, so I'm just going to reiterate here again. I attended the Dare to Lead with Caryn, and it was a wonderful experience. But I'm going to explain it a bit, and then Caryn's going to talk to you about all the different seats in the arena and take you through that experience and just visualize it. And what we're going to invite you to do is maybe even take a paper and a pen and maybe even draw a little arena. You know, the arena, if you look at the Colosseum, kind of, draw a little arena for yourself. And there are different seats in the arena, and Caryn is going to take you through those seats, and maybe you can identify some of the people who are sitting in those different seats for you. But just to explain it to you, so we were in a venue, and Caryn took us to a door. I remember this distinctly. We got up, and after we'd done our training, and we were now ready to start identifying what we're going to be doing to actually get to the other side, to step out as brave leaders. And just visualize this. We walk into a different room, and first of all, we hear the Chariots of Fire music, which is, goosebump. It's a goosebump moment. And then we walked through, and Caryn exposed us to the different seats in the arena and helped us to understand how different people are playing different roles in our lives, and we're allowing them to play different roles in our lives, and has a huge impact on our ability to, in fact, demonstrate self-compassion, because there are all kinds of critiques around, and we critique ourselves, and then there is critique coming from other avenues, and then how we deal with that can shape and change the way that we actually show up and how we lead ultimately. So just visualize this, an arena, bottom seats, top seats, box seats, just to visualize that. And Caryn will take us through actually understanding those different seats and maybe help us to identify who are the people that are playing different roles, sitting in different seats in our arena. Because we first want to identify who's around in our arena so that we can then start talking about, well, how do we step into the arena and Caryn will take us through that, a little bit of an experience.
Thank you. So the arena is a metaphor for when we're being courageous, when we feel vulnerable and we want to do something and we're scared of the outcome. It's scary, it's emotionally scary. And it can be little things like asking a question in a meeting, putting your hand up for clarification, versus it could be life purpose things that we just really need to do. And I think we have moments of courage every single day in life. Sometimes I think driving in Johannesburg invokes quite a lot of courage. So just getting from A to B. So that's the metaphor. So we, considering that metaphor, and you described it so beautifully, Jeanette, we all have different arenas that looks different for us. Could be that gladiator type arena, could be a soccer field arena. And the arena is from the quote from Franklin Roosevelt, is the man in the arena. Is it's not the critic that counts, it's the person in the arena who's getting their butt kicked and their face is marred with dust and sweat. And even if they fail having dared greatly. And that was the name of Brené's second successful book. So there are different parts in the arena. When we go into the arena, the seats at the very top, which are usually the cheapest part of the arena, those are the cheap seats which they hurl advice to us, cheap advice, judgment and criticism. You know, who do you think you are? You're useless, especially if you let them down. But these are the people who will never get into the arena. So it's much easier to criticize when you are doing something. Then you have what they're called the season ticket holders. And they're also always there. They get more reasonable, but they come to every single event. And they use a lot of comparison. Is you're not, and don't know why you tried that. Scarcity is a big thing. And it can also be a bit of armor that we use. There's not enough to go around. There are not enough resources. And also shame gets used as well. And then we have the parts of the arena, and we call them the box seats, that belong to the people who actually paid for and built the arena. And they built this arena to suit them and the way that they watch what's going on, but also to benefit people who are similar to them. And yeah, they're all those isms that come out in this all the sexism and classism and racism and all those isms. Like, who do you really think? Stereotypes and misinformation, a lot of fear comes. So these people exist, but I think it's largely what you said, is, Jeanette, it's what we think they are saying and how we internalize that in that arena. And then there are two very important seats in the arena, and that's our support section. And that's where the people who give us empathy and compassion. And actually a person, I think of my dear mother, who is my biggest supporter. But she can also criticize me, she can give me a lot of feedback. So that people can sit in both seats, but it's where we're sitting. Are we sitting in our support seat? And do we use that empathy and self-compassion? And I think self-compassion is such an important tool for ourselves in being brave leaders.
Great. So if we look at this, And we're saying, who are the people around us? I mean, if we're looking at the box seats, we could say that's the organization or the, the setup, the system that we are operating within. And either we just operate within that system and allow that system to actually dictate, and that will then influence the extent to which we actually are able to apply self-compassion and also to be authentic and real, or do we just adjust ourselves to accommodate the people who are sitting in the box seats? Yeah.
And that's the fitting in concept.
The fitting in.
Yeah.
And then I'm not authentic, and then I won't be vulnerable, and therefore I won't apply being courageous as a leader, and then I'll just conform to what the box seat people want me to actually be or do. And that's when shame comes in, isn't it? Because when I'm not being my authentic self, when I'm not able to be courageous and vulnerable, then shame starts creeping in, because then I start criticizing myself because I don't have the whatever it takes for me to be who I really need to be, because I'm dominated by what I believe the box seat, or the power that the box seat people really have over me within this environment.
Or the power we're giving them.
Or the power we're giving them, yes, correct. Same as with the cheap seats. To what extent do we entertain and allow the people in the cheap seats to continuously, criticize and critique? And as you're saying, but they never have mud on their faces. They never get dirty and into the real issues per se, but they're able to give a lot of feedback on the sidelines and critiques on the sidelines. Yeah, and it's an interesting one for us as leaders to just stop and think about how much power are we allowing others to have over us in how they show up, the impact it has on us, and then how it diminishes, how it diminishes us. And then we're not able to step into true brave leadership ourselves. Yeah. Crispin, were there any comments in the chat box? Any questions asked that we can just sit on this for a bit?
I've unmuted. Di speaks to us having enablers or disablers around us, and how much time we give to each of them.
Yeah.
But linked to that, I'm personally struggling a little with this concept of self-compassion.
Yes.
Loving myself, kind of self-centeredness, and I'm wondering the link, Caryn, to self-forgiveness.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering about those two concepts and whether they're similar or not.
Yeah, so I think self-compassion, I'll describe. So Brené uses the work, I think it's a colleague from the University of Texas, of somebody called Kristen Neff, and I love her work as well. I definitely want to go on one of her courses, and she does offer beautiful online courses. If anybody follows in social media, follow her. So she talks about 3 elements of self-compassion. And the first one is the self-kindness versus self-judgment. And in a little clip that I play, she talks about, are you your inner ally or are you your inner enemy? So we do a little exercise where we compare the way that we talk to other people versus the way that we talk to ourselves. And I bet most of us, the way we talk to ourselves, we would never dare to talk to anybody else. So we really are very hard on ourselves. You're laughing, am I right? Yeah, absolutely. So, so then another element of Kristen Neff's work is where we say, oh, why does it only happen to me? It's only me. It's only me that has these situations, versus this happens to everybody. Everybody struggles. I don't think there's anybody in this world that doesn't have some form of struggle and something that's somewhere that they're suffering. So it's to recognize that part of being human is that we struggle and that we need to learn and grow, versus this is just you. And then another aspect of Kristen's work is that she said, she talks about mindfulness is where we just need to pay attention without that judgment, and to feel our self-compassion versus that over-identifying and or make that line in cement, I'm not going to think about this anymore. So this whole area of self-compassion has become quite a big therapeutic tool overseas, with addiction, with a lot of psychiatric illnesses that people have, and also like a lot of work you can do. Kristen talks about, she gives an example, I've got the research report, of from really bad war, and found some people had post-traumatic stress disorder and some people didn't. And why? And what they found out, it was the way that people talk to themselves. So this is absolutely crucial to do that work.
I've definitely found that it's almost like self-compassion is almost like how you start applying a bit of self-coaching, self-therapy. It's how you actually, sort of you talk to yourself. It's not just positive affirmations. It's just being authentic and true and vulnerable and real and honest with yourself about what you're feeling, about how you're showing up. And as you're saying, taking away some of that critical judgment and just resting within, and just, it is what it is. And then, okay, then maybe there's a step forward or something I can do to change that. But just being able to rest in, the situation and who you are at that stage is something that we don't stop to actually just do. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And not to compare ourselves to other people.
Absolutely.
And not thinking, oh, first world problem. If you are feeling something, you can have that self-compassion. We shouldn't compare, how much we suffer or how little we suffer in compared to other people.
And that has a huge impact on how we actually then relate to others. I think going back to Di's, one of the first statements, if we can't practice that self-love or acceptance of self, then how do we connect authentically and honestly and openly and truly with other people when we're in denial of who we are ourselves as such?
Being our inner ally.
Being an ally for yourself. But as you're saying, not just accepting yourself unconditionally, we need to learn and grow all the time. We also need to accept that which is not that great, but with kindness, not with a bad, negative, it's wrong type of judgment as to who we are, but rather there's an area for refinement or growth or development. Yeah. So if we start pulling this together, and you had to give us some critical tools of what are the most critical things that we can go out as leaders to do to practice brave, daring, courageous leadership, that demonstrates that we connected with ourselves and that we are able to demonstrate self-compassion, and therefore we are able to connect with others and meet them where they are at as well. And how do we ensure as brave leaders that we are sitting in the right seats in the arena, in other people's arenas, and that we are our own supporters and allies for ourselves, but that we are supporters and allies for people around us instead of sitting in cheap seats and criticizing. Give us some wonderful words of wisdom and guidance in terms of what are the critical things we can go out there and practice to demonstrate brave and daring leadership.
Yeah, I think first of all is do the work. That's self-work. order to develop that self-love. So who we are is how we lead, but we need to grow and develop. Brené says that she has two therapists and one coach because she works with her family. Yeah, so she needs it. So go for coaching, develop oneself. There are many ways of doing that. The other thing is to practice your empathy skills. And we're not taught how to do that. And it doesn't mean giving advice. It's about connecting to the emotion and understanding the emotion of people. And I think to become curious. So not just telling people what to do, but ask questions. That curiosity does become your superpower. So that's like the biggest things that I would say, right, connecting with yourself so that you can connect to other people. Because the way you treat yourself is the way you also treat other people, maybe in a little bit more subtle ways.
And I suppose we don't all realize that, do we? We don't all realize that actually if we had to observe the way that we might be relating or connecting with other people around, whether it be in our families or the way we lead teams, that there are actually messages back to us for us to introspect and to go and have a look at and to actually say, what is it about me that I need to learn and grow that could be causing me to behave in a particular way as I'm connecting with other people? What is it teaching me about me? Rather than those people cause me to behave in a particular way, but rather what is it teaching me about myself? And does it go right back into self-compassion, shame, for me to identify, am I my own worst critic? And is that why I'm so easily critical of other people? Possibly. There's lots of lessons actually that we need to learn in the way we show up with others that brings us back. Crispin, are there any questions or comments in the chat box that anyone would like to maybe ask Caryn before we
Yes, please.
Bring it to a close? Yeah.
Guy just popped something that's really hits a chord. When I was younger, it was all about me. But as I'm getting older, it's all about others and how we need to shift our mindset. And then Sue is just saying, thank you, Caryn, for sharing and spending time with us. I feel inspired to read more as this content is so interesting. So I have popped in the chat box the link to connect with Caryn. If you want to follow up further.
Yeah, so Brené is very generous in her work. And if you go onto her website, there's so much there. And the podcasts are amazing, the old podcasts, and she's doing a series of podcasts as well. So you can go there.
Super, thank you. Jeanette, any final thoughts from you and comments before I bring it to a close, please?
Yeah, I think I've just got this, I think it consolidating everything, it's, we talk about brave leadership, and no, you're not going to get a recipe book and a list of go and do these things and you're going to be this brave leader. It's actually go and do the inner work, go and identify for yourself. And let's learn how, that self-compassion is just absolutely that practicing kindness to self. Acknowledging yourself, being less critical and judgmental of yourself, not just accepting absolutely everything, but being prepared to just, as you say, being present and mindful and allow yourself to experience what you're experiencing, and then from there on to be able to move forward. I think that's probably the best university to learn empathy and kindness and compassion, and then to be able to go and display it in connection with other people. So we're always looking externally for what are the tools and the skills and the things that will make us better leaders, but ultimately it's sitting within more so than what it is externally.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you from my side. And I can just to everyone, I attended the course with Caryn, and it was an absolutely fantastic experience. And Caryn will be running a number of the Dare to Lead courses, and I can certainly attest and recommend that is something to do, whether you do it in a formal leadership capacity or whether you do it for your own personal growth, or whether you take a team of people within an organization. I know many people might think, oh, this is the soft stuff, it's aimed at individuals for personal introspection and so forward. But I think that is the beauty about that we're learning about leadership, is that it is very much an inside job. It is about who we are, which then impacts on how we show up. It's not so much about the latest tools and techniques. All of those things are really important for us to be able to survive within this new turbulent world, but grounded within who you are is absolutely the best recipe, because the world around us keeps changing around us. But if we anchored in who we are, we're able, and we can connect with other people, it is the thing that holds us together. Thank you, Crispin. Would you like to close it? And thank you so much, Caryn.
Close with a confession, Caryn. I remember when I joined one of the consulting houses as a young consultant, how we were drilled into fake it till you make it. And how that's become part of my DNA and the way I think, and how I unconsciously have actually brought my kids up in that way. Fake it until you make it. And the disservice we may have done to generations of young people and consultants and other professionals just with that. And so my question around self-forgiveness was really also aimed at probably going back and unlearning. And you said that there's so much we have to unlearn. We need to get, or I need to get to a place of saying it's okay, and get closure and healing. Because I think fake it till you make it has probably done more damage than the core message of you this evening was of being real and truthful and authentic and genuine. So thank you so much. I really just, you can hear it. I've got a lot to think through, and it's been really, really special. Thank you so much. Jeanette, thank you for holding the space in the nice way you did, the authentic way you did. And thank you to everybody who was on the call. I'm glad to see Robertson was in the house, but Robertson was having a glass of water. There's something wrong in Robertson. But to all of you on the call, thank you so much. Our next Leaders in Conversation in May, we're theming it around education. And I've got some incredible guest speakers who are in the arena of education, Caryn, and have turned around dysfunctional schools and how they've been doing that. And it's going to be incredible to learn from them how they were in the face of adversity, gang violence, disruptive communities have successfully turned around a school. And so the theme of courageous and bravery, or courage and bravery, goes through into May. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening and blessings for the rest of your week. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.